Hello everyone, my name is Sergio. I've been a primary school teacher for 10 years in London. I absolutely love teaching, and I also love to share the knowledge and skills that I have learned. I'm going to be going through the lessons I've planned in the past, walking through why I've done the things I've done and how I've done the things I've done. I want to share to you the lessons, the differentiation, the thought process behind every single decision I've made. I hope this is helpful for any kind of teachers, new or old. Let's begin. So this is a year 4 lesson I taught last year in perimeter, quite standard. I'm going to go through 3 lessons for the autumn term, and then I'm going to revisit the summer term in another video. So what I'm going to do first is look at the curriculum and see what actually year 4s need in terms of perimeter. This is a lesson that's shared with area usually, so you can spend either 2 lessons on perimeter and then 3 lessons on area, or you can do 3 lessons on area, 3 lessons on perimeter, doesn't matter. I've done 3 just to get started with. So the year 4 curriculum, I'll go to the next slide, is down here, and it's to measure and calculate the perimeter of rectilinear figures, including squares in centimeters and meters. So they need to know a bit about conversion, and they also need to know measuring in general. Measuring comes from year 3, and that is simply how to use a ruler, really, how to use a ruler and how to write the centimeters and also understand millimeters to a small extent. And also in year 3, you also need to go a bit into the halves, quarters, and 3/4, but not with measurement. It's usually around just halves. So this is where they've come from. This is where they're going. And when we have the only difference we have here is to calculate, really. Calculate means that they can add up the perimeter in a number of different number sentences, using a number of different number sentences. And we're going to focus more on rectilinear figures, including squares. I can't say that word, I struggle. And then in year 5, they're going to composite rectilinear figures, shapes, which we actually touch on in year 4. We shouldn't really, because it's not in the curriculum, but many schools do. And I do find in tests, they actually ask students to go into that. I'm going to explain what that is later on. But I would never really say this to a new teacher. But I think it's okay to kind of dip into the year 5 curriculum for this, especially for the hires, because perimeter is a very easy concept, but that's under your discretion. All right, so I've kind of planned it out like this. On Monday, I'm going to be measuring line. I want to revisit the year 3 curriculum and just measure line, see if they can do that. And also, I want to see if they can measure a shape, a 2D shape. So really, the first lesson is just seeing where they're at. The second lesson, I'm going to get much more into it, seeing if they can understand how to measure perimeter on a grid. That's either if the grid is showing, or if there's showing on the outside, or might not be showing on the outside. So you'd have a solid shape on the grid, or you might have a transparent shape on the grid. That's probably a better way of saying it. So I'm going to sort of test them in those ways. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to do much more reasoning problems to try and see how they've grasped the concept. All right, so lesson 1. I always have the objective at the top of the unit, so I'm sure I can come back to the curriculum and always reference that. I'm going to remind myself that it's going to be self-marking today for the kids. Also, I'm going to come around, so it's going to be a bit of both self-marking and teacher marking. First thing I always do in my classes, I have this screen up here. By the way, I'm using Smart Notebook. I've used PowerPoint, I've used ActiveLearn. Smart Notebook is just the software my schools have had. I do actually personally love it. I think it gives me a lot of tools to work with the students and to show them my whiteboard, my working space. So I just use it a lot. I'll have another video explaining all the kind of tools I learned to make my lessons very successful. So I have this here. It's a cutout of their maths book. Very important, I believe, because I want presentation to be beautiful. I don't want them to be surprised. They need to know what it looks like in their books. 1 number per box. The aim is written there. It's underlined. It should be very clear, the presentation. They should know this. But to have it there, the same background as what they're using, really helps the lesson move forward. I'm going to get them to go with number bonds, because most of the questions I'm going to do today in their task, I'm going to be working with number bonds. So I won't veer away too much from that, but that's an intentional quick math task. In the summer term, I then develop more with white rose maths. which is it's a fantastic system. I developed the starters much more based on their scheme, but at this stage is just kind of like my own thing. So I want children to, as soon as they come into the room, as soon as we start the lesson, they're going to write the aim and date and then just do the quick maths in their book. You may supplement this with big maths, and they have like a 5-minute, 4 different categories of math skills, and they do 5 minutes on each. So whatever starter works for you is absolutely fine. But here you go. So I want them to kind of make those links. There's a number bond there, and I've actually colored them in just to start with because I want students to kind of see that link over here. Sometimes I haven't done number bonds, but that's absolutely fine. So students will do that once they finish. I'm going to do. I show them the success criteria. Sometimes the SC success criteria is very literal. I place the ruler on the 0. Or the object on the 0. I make sure, not made sure, well, yeah, I made sure that the ruler is straight. So very simple, literal ways to make this lesson successful. Sometimes it's a lot more abstract, but this time I'm going to actually give them those steps there so it's very clear. I'm not going to copy paste this on all the other slides. Of course, every school has different policies, but I just find it's just so much clutter if it was on all the slides. I just don't see why you would do it. I'm very big into dual coding, which is just simple slides with the least amount of distraction. That's what children need. They're way too distracted. I want to just see if children understand what measurement is. They might be saying size, they may be saying kilometers, they may be saying meters, and this could be very good for a working wall. So what we do know now, and then what we will know later on. So this is very good for a working wall. Just see what they know. I'm going to then give them a bit of a visual on the focus, which is length today. So if we're going to use these terms, we're going to be looking at what? Length or weight. Not too difficult, this question. I'm going to actually show them a practical guide on how to assess the distance of different things. So of course, the children know whiteboard, 1 millimeter, which one could it be? Oh, it matches to C, etc. So just kind of show them a way to think about length that they can use with their body. Part 1 of the lesson. I never do parts. It's kind of all just flows, but this is the intention. The reason I did this was because I wanted to really separate how to use the equipment versus answering questions. That was the intention here. So part 1 is just measuring line. So I'm going to show these students this slide. You can see it's very clean. I know I have nothing unnecessary there. Talk to the person next to you. Which one is correct, and can you explain why? Sorry, I always have slides. I'm just going to add a few things here and there. Children should identify that the object is not on the 0 here. It should be on the 0, and therefore that is incorrect. It's the wrong measurement. We have to have a 0 there. I always like to explain why to students, and I just kind of tell them that we might chip the ruler over there, and therefore it doesn't make it a fair test. I will do another video on how I access Smart and get these like lovely little instruments here that are nice and see-through and I can work well with. So I'll definitely do another video on all of that. I won't waste time with that. So I can just kind of move the ruler. So that's that. They know what a ruler is. It's on their table. They identify their instruments straight away, the equipment straight away. There's no confusion there. All right, I'm going to get this to measure. I'm going to get a student to come up now and get them to just move the object, and I want to see how will they do that. I've of course done this already in my lesson preparation and can see that it's going to be a whole number. And I'm going to just say, oh, that's 6 centimeters. This is year 3 curriculum. It's going to be 60 millimeters. What can I do? Oh, times 10. So that's just a nice little, this is what you're about to do, year 4. Can you do this as well? I'm then going to do a zoom in. There's 2 different rulers there. I'm going to see, can anyone tell me what measurement this is? Hopefully they should be saying 14 centimeters. I'm going to say, oh no, there's a problem over here. I'm going to scroll down. Nice, clean, big images. Now this isn't exactly 14. It's not exactly 15. It's halfway. Can someone tell me how I can solve this? Now they may say, oh, it's 14 and a half. I'm going to write the decimal. 14 and a half. I'm going to say, but how did you find it? How did you know? You can see here I have boxes that are the same color as the background. Lots of teachers do this thing, which is they color in the box, and it just creates more drama. It makes it a slide that's too busy. So I get rid of that and I make it nice, the same as background. And I always used to leave a little tiny bit here. Sometimes I used to do little circles and make like fancy buttons, but that I find is the most effective. So the strategy, the way to do that, and you have to make sure you use the word strategy, in mathematical terms, like that. So count the intervals. So I can see 14 and I can just start to count that. I'm going to actually visually show them 14, 14.1, 14.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. So I'm going to just say it out loud, okay? So that's also very good. The reason I'm doing this is because the task that I'm about to give them is exactly that. So I'm going to let students, give them this little task over here, let students measure these lines and see what they come up with. And I want the partners to mark this. You can see I've got some extra information here that I'm going to reveal slowly, but it doesn't clutter their vision. They're not going to be distracted by that. Now, if I see students are sort of finishing, I'm going to delete that, and they can see that they can draw a line on your whiteboard for your partner to measure. So they can just do random lines and see how they go. At this stage, I think there's so many different terms. I'm going to say activity 1 for the lowers, like lower attainers, mid attainers is activity 2, and activity 3 is highers. But in previous schools I've worked at, we've only really differentiated for mids and highers. That's one activity of differentiation, and activity 1, which is the lowers, we've only differentiated that. Of course, extensions, and of course, most importantly, for the special educational needs students, the SEND students, we have to always differentiate for them. For this, in the class that I taught, they will be able to access this, but I do have, I'm going to just go to that slide now, I do have this little task here. They have crocodiles. We're going to just measure them. If they can't actually use the ruler, we're just going to focus on smaller and bigger, and that's what we're going to focus on, because we want to get them to understand what is larger, what is smaller. And that's where I'm going to go with that, okay? So that's part 1. They've done that. I'm going to reveal the answers, see if they got it right, delete the answers, bam, 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 and they should be able to do that. Now, year 4, we're going to now go into part 2 of the lesson. Fantastic for doing your measurements. Excellent, good to see. I want to tell you first what perimeter actually means. We did a Greek focus, so we just linked it back to the word and the origins of the word. It's really helpful for students to know where the words come from. They really find it interesting. So I always put a lot of effort into trying to get those key words understood. The next part of this, I've given my co-teacher the option. I actually have a sheet of what I'm going to be doing next that they can do under the visualizer, so they can have that practical, physical, tangible process of finding perimeter. Or I'm going to do it on the slides. I'm going to do it on the slides here, so you can see nice, clear slide. I got this just to help me if I need it, but it's nice and small to the right-hand side. So I got my ruler. I'm going to show you for this. Oh, is this correct, everyone? No, why not? Because the 0 is not there. All right, so 0, there's 3 centimeters. I'm going to write 3 centimeters. I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And I know it's a square, everyone, so I should see what the other sides are. I should know what the other sides are. So I'm going to measure that. That's another 3 centimeters. With this software, I'm holding Control and I'm dragging it, so I can actually just do that very quickly without having to write and take up more time. I really like working with technology. I think it just makes a whole lot of sense. So 3 centimeters there. Of course, what I'll be doing is writing the measurements down here and then translating it into a number sentence. And I can see there's a relationship between these sides, these lengths. I might then grab, it might be a bit too early to do this. I don't want to confuse them or clutter their knowledge just too much, but I can start to point out that there's a relationship there. Opposite sides are the same. We should be able to do that, everyone. So we can now start to see the starter that I was doing. In the starter, we were adding up number sentences that had 4 different amounts in them. So yeah, they should be able to answer that. And what I always do, because it's quite important later on, is I write this. So I've done the answer, and then in my book when I write it, I've done that, and I said, why is that wrong, everyone? And they're going to say, but it's right. I'm going to say, no, you have to have the unit of measurement at the end. So that's centimeters, because we don't know if it's meters, kilometers. we have to know the unit of measurement. Okay, so that's really important for students to understand. I'll do a few more of these. So here's the rectangle. I'll measure that out, and I'll just do a few more examples. They're going to get ready. I might get a student to come up. Here we have the triangle. We're going to do that. I wouldn't need 4, but we have that there. So I'll get students to come up and do that. And then I might get someone to do this. Some of the highs there, I just want to get them to measure different lines. So they'll come up. What line do we see here? Okay, 4 centimeters. I'm going to drag that up, and we're going to keep measuring. I'm going to then write 7 centimeters, and we'll just add that up. Again, this is for hires, so I'm not going to stress this, and we can easily leave this slide out if it's too much. This is the task. It's so important to have the task on the screen, in my opinion, because I want to engage with students while they are working things out. Students will put their hand up and say, what's question 2? What's happening in question 2? And I can be like, all right, let's look at the board. Let's do this together, that kind of thing. It wouldn't really work with perimeter because the lines would be different, but generally I always have the slides up with the work. They've seen the task worked out before. It's not a surprise. This isn't a surprise to them. They've seen exactly what I have taught already. So many teachers give a task that looks completely different to the input. It really throws students off, I made this using Word. I have used a lot of white rows and big maths, and then you will see that later on in summer. But just for the start, I'm making my own resources now. But yeah, there you go. And also, very importantly, I have this on the board, which is the layout. This is how I want students to lay it out. Students really appreciate this because you can have this, and I don't really want students to write the answers for the activity 1, which is red circle. I might get them to do it on their sheet. Activity 2 and 3. I want them to copy this into their books. I don't want them to glue these sheets in because there's just too much paper. It just doesn't look good. So that's the expectation. I've written it in. They know how it looks and they can do it. They also get a sense of pride doing that. Then I have the answers which we can go through, but I of course be walking around the classroom and marking and ticking as they go. Then there's a plenary. Usually I put in questions from tests because I really want to relate their learning to what it looks like in a test. There's a lot of different debates on what the plenary can be. Yes, it does reference the lesson at hand and extends them a bit further, but I really want to get them familiar with what test questions look like so it all makes sense in context. But for this case, I did get them to tell me how to measure the perimeter. What do we need to do? So in this case, I didn't use test questions. That's it for lesson 1. The next day, lesson 2, I'm going to go a bit more deeper and finding out what they know. So I know that for some of these questions, we're going to be having to add halves. So again, they're going to write the aim and date, or the LO, or the WALT, or the LI. They're going to be adding halves, and I know that this skill might be quite difficult for them. So I'm going to show them how. I'm going to either go through this way, half plus half is 1. That's just what you need to remember. It needs to be a fact that you've remembered. Or I'm going to do this, which I'm going to do half plus half is a 1. And then 1 plus 1 is 2. And that's my new number sentence. And there we have it. That's 3. Now, half plus half is 1. 2 plus 2 is 4. So that's how I'm going to sort of just quickly teach them halves. Really, you can spend a whole lesson on how to add halves and quarters and 3/4. You're not going to add quarters and 3/4 in year 4. That'll be more year 5, but more explicitly anyway. But adding halves is actually quite a skill that could be implemented much before this lesson. But this is a really quick way of just getting them familiar. Half and half is 1. 30 plus 30 is 60, so it's 61. That's just them to understand that. So there's my success criteria. I don't spend too much on this. I don't know. I do spend a lot of time on this, and sometimes I have this on every slide, but not for perimeter. All right, now we come to the infamous. These are what's going to happen in the test questions. So I've got a lot of input down there just for me or any supply teacher that takes over. Got a lot of input there, but I've already got the answers in my head. So the purpose of this slide is to show them different ways to get the perimeter on a grid. The first way I've written is for them to count just without ending. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12. I can see that the perimeter is 12 centimeters. So that one I'm just counting on. I'm going to name the skill. I'm counting on. What am I doing here for? Counting on. So I'm naming the skill because they need to be able to explain what they're doing when you ask them. The second way year 4, I would be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 11. Is that 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. And then I would do this new one. That's a 2. And then I could either count again, or I could do opposites. So I'm giving them these new different ways of engaging with shapes that they can work with. And then I'm going to write the number sentence next to it. Well, for this one, I'm going to write the number sentence. Or what I can do is I can do chunking. All right. We can say chunking, which is 11 and 2, 13 plus 11 and 2, and I'm actually going to circle this, and that's it. That's chunking. So I'm going to add all that together, etc., and then obviously finish the number sentence, but I don't want to take up too much time. So there are 2 different ways, year 4, that you can add the perimeter of a rectilinear shape. In the summer term, I do go through what that word means. In this lesson, I forgot to catch rectilinear. At this time, I am just wanting them to just learn the skill before we get to theoretical. So, is there a quicker way of doing this? So I can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, what skill can we do? What do we know? What facts? Oh, the opposite. Oh, so 7. Okay, that's the opposite. 1, 2, 3. And that's 3. The opposite must be there. So there we go. I've used opposite knowledge to make the counting quicker. Now I can use my number bonds. So that's going to be 10 and 10. So that's a much quicker way I can do that. All right. So doubling. I'm going to be using, what am I using it for? Doubling. Okay. And that way they can be much more quick at their this. So I'm actually teaching them mental maths here. This is mental math strategies to then just be able to count, add, and add in their head. If they add this, they can do 7 and 7. So they've actually already chunked it, and then they've put it into the number sentence that's translated that. So there's 2 different ways of doing that there. Now on their sheet, I've actually made this sheet for them. I want them to see which method they're using. Are they going to be counting on, or are they going to be doubling? So I'm going to walk around the classroom and see what they're going to be doing. And I'm going to encourage them to do both, and then I want them to explain to me which is their favorite and why. So then we have in tests, this comes up. So I'm going to say to year 4, sometimes we don't see the grid. It's not transparent. We don't see it, so we can get a bit confused. But don't worry, use the squares on the outside. Use the squares on the outside. So I'm going to make that very explicit. I'm going to model that as well and just show them I'm using the squares there. My feed just stopped. I usually get a highlight up, and I mark the page and I say this is where my eye is going. So I can see one square there, another square there, so they can actually see what I'm talking about. So I would do that, and I say also year 4, actually in tests, sometimes they take away the outside and I can only see the grid inside. So I'm just showing them that it's the exact same process. It's not to be fooled by that. And then this goes into the more year 5 curriculum. Because students are ready, most students, they can easily do these sorts of things within 10 minutes. Okay, so it doesn't really give too much focus, but you'd be surprised at how many students actually can struggle with that. This is aimed much more for the highs, the activity 3, and I would go through this, and this is where we get a big mix-up. We do that. So lots of students do that, and they miss this spot. And I'm going to circle that in red. I'm going to say, don't let this trick you, because students love the drama. Don't let this trick you. It's a corner trying to escape, because they love stories. So that one we have to do. I'm going to say this. Can everyone watch me and see if it's trying to escape? And I'm going to do that, and they're going to go, oh, wow, yeah, it's escaping. So I found what it's trying to escape, so I have to do that, all right? I am just using I'm going to say to them, I'm going to use the counting on method because it is an irregular shape, and therefore, or it's a composite shape, and therefore it's going to might be confuse me. So I'm just going to be doing counting on. Some students will be very confident with that, but I'm going to be saying I'm going to choose to use the counting on method. All right, so then we have the last question before the task, which is going to always also come up in tests, or has come up in test, and it says to draw a rectangle that has a perimeter of 20 centimeters. So year 4, I'm going to be getting my part whole model, or some schools just like the bar model. I'm going to be getting my part whole model, and I need to draw a shape that has a perimeter, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5, that has a shape of perimeter of 20 centimeters. How can I do that? Well, I can do it systematically, which means I'm going to go one step at a time. I can do it 10 and 10. Okay, that equals 20. That's good. But wait a minute, we can't have a two-sided shape. So we have to, 10 and 10 doesn't work. What about 9 and 9? Okay, that's 18. I can add a 1, number bonds, 2. Oh, that's 20. That can work, and I can draw whatever that looks like. So I'm going to use here for my part whole model. I'm going to use my bar model to show you how I can work out systematically what a rectangle looks like with a perimeter of 20 centimeters. That's how I'm going to solve this problem. And that's the language I'm going to use. I am going to reference other strategies, other representations, part whole model and bar model, so students are becoming very fluent, and it's going to develop their toolkit on how to access questions like this. So that's the extreme of lesson 2. And then task 2, they have this. This resource, I think, was from White Rose. Absolutely amazing resource center. Oh my goodness, it's got everything you need, including the teaching slides, and including, I think, someone teaching the lesson. So White Rose is a fantastic scheme that our school put into last few years. It's really just saved a lot of time. There's many other schemes. I won't go into it, and I'm not sponsored by anyone, so I'm not. This is just what I've learned, and I just found very effective. This is also very easy to make yourself on something like this on Microsoft Word. Sorry, just checking the time there. All right, so that's the extent of the lesson, and this really is as far as the Year 4 curriculum is going to go in terms of perimeter. It's not going to go much more complicated than that. I will say to them, the layout is here. This is how I want it to be looked like. This is how I want it to look like, and that's it. There's no excuses. So that's all there. Answers are there. Of course, I'm going to come around and mark it as well. Here we have a question that will come into a test. This is from TestBase. It's also a lovely resource. I think it's not free. TestBase is a resource that has many papers, and you can just type in area. You can just type in algebra, and it'll have all the questions from tests that come up with that keyword. So when you type in perimeter, I've got this question that's come up, and I'm going to say Year 4. This is what it's going to look like in a test. We've done it in class, but in a test, this is what it's going to look like. And this actually motivates me to get to the plenary, because so many times the plenary can be not done. This is, for me, is very exciting, because it really connects them to their learning in unfortunately tests, which is a way that we're assessing. So that's the end of lesson 2. Lesson 2. And all I've done is now shown them how a rectangular shapes exist on grids, and that's it. They're just counting that. So lesson 3. This one we're going to use much more reasoning and problem-solving skills to access. We can skip this one really because the other two satisfy the curriculum, but we're just going to kind of keep pushing. I'm going to be doing doubling here. So can you double these numbers? Okay, so 6, and this must be 60. This came out of a previous day where they were struggling with doubling, so I just want to kind of integrate it here. Yeah, so that's why I chose this one. Looking back, I wouldn't do this. I would do a different starter, but it's not the end of the world. It's a skill they need to know. Here's all the success criteria, and of course this is much more abstract. It's quite hard for them to read. It's not step by step. That's fine. All right, so I've written the answers in. I'm going to go back to that, and I'm going to have a nice clean, there we go, absolutely clean. I think I can do this as well. If I did set image transparency and get rid of that, I could even make that just, oh, beautiful. That's what children deserve here, because you don't want to have clutter. So this is the actual sentence I'm going to be saying. I know that the opposite side has an equal length, or is the equal length. So that's just very explicit, and I'm going to write that. So 8 centimeters, and 3 centimeters. This lesson, I'm going to really try to get their vocabulary solid and their ways of explaining themselves solid, because I want them to write this in their books, things like that in their books. Sorry, I've just realized I've not deleted some stuff. So year 4, we're going to find the perimeter, and we're going to use the long number sentence. So let me get my 8 centimeters. We know what the measurements are on the other side. Well, I know that's 8 centimeters. There's 3 centimeters because I'm looking. And again, I'm going to either walk up. I do like to use the highlighter for some reason. It's just something I like doing. I can see year 4, that's 3 centimeters. So opposite is going to be 3 centimeters. Okay, so that's something I'm going to be saying out loud. Now let's do it the long way. This is a great strategy. You're allowed to do it. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just going to take more time up, and that might not be good in certain situations. Now I'm going to be doing number bonds, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's 11. I'm going to add these up. 11. Must be 11 as well. Oh, that's easy to add up. So 22. All right. So that's that. The shorter method is going to be doubling. So I know that either 8 and 3 is 11, and I'm going to double that. Or I'm going to do double 8, which is, yeah, obviously 16, and that's 6. I'm going to be doing different ways of doing that. Yeah, so just the shorter method. So I could write either 11. I'm really just curious how students work it out. What is obvious to them, because what is obvious to me is completely different. So I really am just curious what students do in terms of doubling. Are they going to do the 16 plus 6, or are they going to do the 11 plus 11? So that's what I want to see students do. And I find that very exciting because it's their creativity. Now, on your whiteboards, can you please show me the long or short method? I've just modeled it. Now, your turn to show me which method you're going to do. And I want to see which ones they choose. I might say you might show off year 4, and you might show me both. So that they'll just do that. Now we come to these problems. Now this is definitely year 5 curriculum. As you can see, I've kind of exhausted the year 4 curriculum at the moment, and we should never go to the year 5 curriculum. We haven't got time to go to a curriculum above our levels, but in some schools they do push it, and I've even seen this on resources from companies. I won't say names, but they've got these as year 4 resources. So it's just something that I've taught over the 9 years, and they've been able to access it, but I've taught it because they have been tested on it in year 4 papers. So there you go. Up to you what you want to do. So in this lesson 3, I can see I've got a bit of writing here. I have a problem here. We have a length. Hand up. Who thinks they know what it is? Okay, they might say 4. They might say 5. Let's see what they say. Some might say the answer. How did you know? All right, well, let's go through it. I can see that. I've already done this already. This is 4 centimeters. I can see it. That's what it says. I'm going to drag it up. Hopefully year 4, you're following my eye. We know that that amount is 4 centimeters. Now I can see that this is 5 centimeters. I'm going to drag it up. There we go. That must be 5 centimeters. So knowing those two amounts, I'm doing the part whole model, what could this be? And they're going to be obviously saying 9 centimeters. So I'm going to say that's how I worked it out. I might even draw a line and see and add these up. Okay, so that's how I want them to work it out. Obviously, they'll write the number sentence, so it's much more clearer, and you can go from there. So I've done that, but the key to this, the success, I think, in the teaching of it, is the dragging up of the line. This is 4 centimeters. I can see it's 4 centimeters. I think that is very, very effective. Arrows are good, but I also think that the visualization of that 4 centimeters is even better. So I just really recommend that. Okay, exactly the same thing. Let's see if they can come up, if they can do it. Tom thinks the missing length is 3 centimeters. Is he correct? Well, let's have a look. So I know that this is 3 centimeters. I'm going to bring it across. That's 3, and that's 2. Okay, so it must be 5. Again, I'm going to refer to the part whole model and then make that. I just want to keep making those connections between different representations on how to work with numbers. That's horrible too. Good. Now, this is where at the start of year 4, they'll really struggle in explaining their answers in a concise, specific way. So I don't expect much when I have these explain your answer questions. and you'll see, it just takes a long time. So each lolly stick is 5 centimeters. Tom thinks the perimeter is 20 centimeters. Is he correct? Explain your answer. So the reason why, so let's see what they say. I have my explanation written down here. I have a poor reasoning explanation, and I have a high reasoning explanation, because I know when I teach this in class, I'm going to forget some of the key words that I have to say. So I've got them both down here. So the problem with this one is that Tom has said that this is 5, this is 5, that's 5, and that's 5. So that's why he said it's 20 centimeters, not counting each stick: 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. So that's the problem that Tom has made, this poor Tom. So if I'm going to say year 4, if you in your books say he is wrong because he didn't count each stick, I'm going to say that's good, well done, that makes sense, but that's not using mathematical language. We have to use mathematical language when we're talking about maths. So let's do it properly. I'm going to write, I know he is incorrect because he did not count. Now I have it written down here, so I can literally copy that. Each stick as a whole. Full stop. I might have to expand on that. The total perimeter. Oh yeah. I might include. I'm going to just shorten this, right? Make this smaller. Since each popsicle stick. Sorry about the spelling. Lolly stick. That's my Australian coming through. Since each lolly represents 5 centimeters, comma, I know that, and I might even count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times 5 centimeters is equal to, and then what is that? 40? 45? No, 40. Yeah, 40 centimeters. Yeah, 40. I don't know, 40 centimeters. So that's one way of saying it. That's quite a lot. That is quite a lot. Okay. So that's one way of saying it. That's quite a lot. But I'm just trying to get them to use these words like represents. Since each lolly stick represents 5 centimeters, I know that since there's 8 lolly sticks, that 5 centimeters will be. So that's quite a lot there, but I'm just trying to get them to use different, more sophisticated language in explaining why he's wrong, not just he's wrong because it is equal to. So that's something there to work on. Yeah, I've become a lot better at that in my summer term because our school really pushed this reasoning process, so it's something quite new, but I absolutely love it. So then we keep going. Let me just move this down. The perimeter of the rectangle is 10 centimeters. So what would the missing be? Well, we know that the total amount is 10. We have one measurement is 4. Since there are opposites, we know that there's 2 4s. That makes an 8. And then, well, what are number bonds to 10? If we add that, so 5 and 5. So there we go. 4, 4, 1 and 1. There we go. We've found the missing lengths. We're going to do that again. I'm going to just grab this whole model, copy, paste it. I'm going to use this again. We know the total amount is 30 centimeters. The perimeter of the rectangle is 30 centimeters. This we know is 10. So what are the other amounts? What are the other lengths? Well, we have to do a double. That's 20. How does 20 get to 30 in 2 jumps? So I might get my number line here. If I have 20, I want to get to 30, I have to do 2 jumps. 20, 21, 30, doesn't make sense. 20, 22, 30, doesn't make sense. 20, 25, 30, I've added 5. So I'm referencing my number line to get that. So I know that the missing lengths are 5 centimeters. Again, this is coming out much higher thinking, but if you have a whole lesson, you can expand on that and you can explore that. They'll then get their activity sheets, and then they'll write in their books. I have their presentation, and that's it. Let me just grab that up. So if I go to maths on Wednesday, their actual sheets look like that. And I've explicitly said when to copy in their books, that kind of thing. So this comes from White Rose, and this is not my resourcing, but I've taken this from White Rose. And you can see, this is what I mean. This is year 4 with White Rose, which is an incredible, reputable company. And they are asking this sort of thing, which is very hard to, I don't know, I can't interpret the year 4 curriculum to say this, because this really comes into the year 5 curriculum a lot. So just a bit confused. You can see here that I've actually copied this question and I've changed the amounts. So when children come to this, they're not confused. They've seen it before. That's very important. So that's my sheets for the mids and higher, and then for my LA group, my activity 1, again, I'm just doing this because I recognize that they didn't understand it. I've actually got 2 different tasks. They didn't really understand it, so I'm just kind of going through it again. When they finished this one, then they're going to go on to doing this one, which is, yeah, much more. It's all there. So that's that one. For my SEN, I'm just going to kind of keep going with measuring things and having that discussion about different sizes of things. But I would definitely have them doing something else at this stage as well. I also have differentiated extensions because I think that's really important. Lots of teachers just print out one extension, and the activity 1, the lowest who finish, they want to do the extension, they come up and they get it, and it's so hard. So I always find a number of extensions. There's lots of resources. Twinkl is amazing, absolutely amazing for extensions. For every single curriculum point, Twinkl just has so much. So I've actually told the children which challenges they can or cannot access. So I've done that for all my lessons, which I think is just, so important. If I just go to Tuesday, I can see my extensions there. All right, again, it's all differentiated extensions. So that's really important. Yeah, so that does it for the lesson 1, 2, and 3 for autumn term. In terms of perimeter, I'm going to come back in summer and do a much more in-depth look at where they should be and what kind of strategies they should be using to access this kind of question. But that's it for year 4. Hope that helps. Yes, let me know in the comments. All the best.